Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Scott Nokes, and this is part of the continuing series on writing, editing, and publishing for digital environments. Today, I'll be talking with Jill Odom. Jill Odom majored in English and journalism when she was at Troy University, and she graduated summa cum laude. While she was at Troy, she worked for the Tripolitan, which is the school newspaper, and earned her bones there as an arts and entertainment writer, variety editor, and sports editor. After she graduated, she was hired as associate editor for a trade publication known as Total Landscape Care, and she was promoted to from that position to editor at Total Landscape Care at the ripe old age of 23 years old. Since then, she's become the content manager for the National Association of Landscape Professionals. She has earned 10 Turf and Ornamental Communicators Association awards, including the very prestigious Gardner Award for Publishing in 2017, which is a Best of the Best award for each category. So, Jill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about, I've just sort of given a very thumbnail sketch, but tell us about your history of how you got into digital writing, editing, and publishing for digital media.
Okay, so I always wanted to be an editor. That's why I majored in English. And when I was looking for jobs after I graduated, I found a post by Randall Riley on Indeed. And the only thing that I remember about the job description was that you had to know AP style. And I was like, I know that. And so I applied. And it was an associate editor position with a Total Landscape Care. And so I did that for a year and a half. And then my boss at the time retired. And I was really surprised that they offered me the editor position. I thought they would hire someone over me, but they saw my potential and decided to let me become editor. So I worked as the editor for Total Landscape Care for 4.5 years, or no, 3.5. So that job entailed basically writing about the landscape industry and just covering anything and everything that professional landscapers were interested in. We'd do a lot of site visits, we'd cover events and products. There was a lot of press events where people like Toro or Husqvarna would want to show off their new products. And so you'd go and demo it, and then you'd write about it. And then in February 2020, I was offered a position as content manager for the National Association of Landscape Professionals. And that's an organization that sort of promotes the industry as a whole. We have over 2,000 members, and we try to tell their stories and offer them business advice, how to recruit and retain employees. And so I have been doing that close to a year now. I started it in March last year. So that's what I've been up to with digital publishing.
So one of the things that I have tried to stress to my class is that we're really still at the dawn, of digital publishing. You can get a Kindle book or an iBook, or we've all been making web pages for a long time, but we're really at the beginning of this. So tell us about your first day at work at Total Landscape Care. What happened? Did you walk in and there was a buzzing newsroom full of ace reporters with press?
No, it wasn't a bullpen like The Office. I really thought it was going to look like that. No joke. Ours was a hall. We had the editorial hall. Everyone else had an office except for me. I got the cubicle with the Christmas decor left in there. My laptop kept shutting off every 5 seconds. So that my first day wasn't the best, but it was really trial by fire with them. They kind of just, if you could figure out how to do your job without them telling you how to do it, then you lasted. That unfortunately was how it worked. They didn't really train you. I do think that my major helped me in general with just knowing how to research and find the information that I needed to write about these topics. It was just like having to write an article about shade gardens. Well, I don't know anything about that. Well, use your past experience. Like, how did you write any of your other English papers? You had to go research it. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I learned a lot of the stuff about the industry. is researching it on my own, because there's a lot of great university extensions and they have information about horticulture and everything, and talking to sources, because don't have any shame in telling them that you don't know anything about a topic. That puts them more at ease, and they're like, oh, okay, so I can just talk to you this like basic and everything. And they have taught me so much. That's one of the things I love the most about this job and industry, is they're crazy passionate about it, and you always are going to learn something new. I've been doing this for close to 6 years now, and I'm still learning stuff about the landscape industry.
So one of the common experiences that a lot of people we've talked to have said, well, the first day I walked in and said, okay, so what do I do? And the people who hired them said, well, we don't know. That's what we hired you to figure out.
Yeah.
So I think when someone hires someone to do this, you know, they don't always know. They know they want something, but they don't know what they want. And you as a writer have to intuit what they want. And so so many of our students will go on to work in fields that they're not experts in. You know, just like you were not an expert in landscaping, right? They're experts in that, and they hire an expert writer to write about it. They don't really understand writing. So as a writer, what do they want from you that they can't articulate to you? What do they want from you that they don't even know the language to say, this is what we want from you as a writer?
In the goal of Total Landscape Care, they wanted clicks because it is an ad generated website. So they want people going on the site and seeing our ads, and that's how they're getting dollars that way. And also we had a couple of ebooks, like white papers that they could download, and then we would sell the emails to certain clients if they wanted to know like who's interested in snowplow stuff. Then we would make a snowplow white paper, and the people that downloaded it were just like, we know that they're interested in this, so here's their email. So we kind of would produce content on the website that we knew that landscapers were looking for, so that they would be on there and see the ads and everything. So it's like, they never ever said that to me, but that's what you figured out as you did the job. It's like they want clicks, and they want them to stay on there a long time. They always wanted sticky content. And they waffled back and forth while I was there, whether they wanted short pieces or long pieces. For a while, they kept saying, oh, people's attention spans are too short, keep it short. And then they're like, no, we want them to stay on there longer, make them longer articles and everything. So you really need to pay attention to the analytics to see which one is actually happening. Like, are they staying and reading the short pieces, or are they staying to reading the long pieces? You can't just go on whims like they like to do. You need to look at the analytics.
Yeah. Well, and also I think, as I said, sometimes they don't know. They're hiring a writer who they're like, you're the writer, write a thing. So now at this point, you've been in the field now for a few years, and you had a sort of meteoric rise, not a sort of, a very meteoric rise through it. From your days as an arts and entertainment writer for the Metropolitan. So now you know quite a bit about landscaping, but as you said, like on the first day, you don't know anything. And I think that's going to be a common experience that a lot of writers will have, where they'll get hired onto a job where you're editing, or you're either writing content or you're editing for something that you yourself are not an expert in. One thing I'll often mention to people is my first editing job was for an accounting firm. I don't know anything about accounting. I actually had to learn some new vocabulary. They kept using these words I didn't know. How would you recommend a writer approach having to write about something where you are really a newbie yourself?
Well, like I said before, researching the topics, and also make sure that it's agreeing across multiple websites if you're looking for something, because that's one thing with landscaping in particular was there's different camps on certain things. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer with stuff like that. It depends on what industry you end up covering. But you don't want to take just one source as the word of God. You need to make sure that there's a consensus there. They could just be like some rogue person that just has a nice looking website, but they don't know what they're talking about. And sources, like those are your friends. Just because they can't write and communicate it well doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. Like, you want to interview them as much as possible, especially when you're starting out, because you don't know. And there is no such thing as a dumb question. It's just like, as long as you let them know, like, hey, I'm not familiar with this industry, please educate me, they will be happy to let you know more about it and everything. So yeah, it's really just researching and interviewing people and wanting to learn it, because if you don't care anything about the industry and you're not absorbing it, you will struggle longer.
So you started off as a writer, and then you moved into a more editorial role. And now in your current role, you are basically also in the role of publisher, as I understand it, right? So you've gone through all this. So how are the concerns of an editor different than the concerns of a writer when you're thinking about a digital space?
So one thing that's interesting is even though I've been in all those roles, I technically wear all those hats still. So I'm writing it, I'm editing it, and I'm like the publisher for it. But when you're an editor, you need to take advantage of the tools that you have. And also, you may not have the luxury of being on a team where other people are going to be able to edit it. So Grammarly is a great resource to use because it catches things. And even though you've probably proofread it a handful of times, your brain keeps fixing it. And so Grammarly helps catch some of that stuff. There's a free version and there's a premium version. So like, it's 2021, take advantage of the things that are available to you when it comes to editing. And also, even though it's a digital, write it or edit it in the sense that this is going to be print. You can't just go back and fix it. Like that is the wrong attitude to have about stuff. It's like, we have a fair amount of sources that want prior review because they want to make sure that it's published right. And even though it's on WordPress, you can go back and fix it later. You want them to be happy with it from the beginning. And you don't want to have to go change all this stuff, because one, that slows you down later in the day. And also, it's just write it right from the beginning.
So you use WordPress as your main platform for this?
Yes, I got lucky, and WordPress is what I've had to use for both jobs.
And you use Grammarly as a tool. Do you pay for the premium or do you just use the free?
I use the free version because I don't feel comfortable charging a lot of stuff to NALP. I try to be a low-cost employee. But I am the only one writing and editing my stuff. So I have to use whatever I can to make sure that there's not silly mistakes in there and everything. It's like at my old job, me and Beth, we would edit each other's stuff. But when you don't have the extra set of eyes, you really do need to take extra care.
Yeah. So Beth, also a former student of mine. So let's now, as content manager, you also have to think about not just does it look right, but you have to think about the kind of the big picture of what's going on there. Whether you're asking someone else to write it or reprinting something someone else has done or producing the content originally yourself. What sorts of things does someone who is either hired on as a content manager have to consider, or a writer who's working for a content manager and you got to sell to a content manager? Maybe you're freelancing or maybe you're pitching ideas. What are the concerns of the content manager that the writer needs to know?
So as a content manager, they are looking at the big picture, and they may be planning, like me, the May-June issue of the bi-monthly magazine and already trying to work on stories for that and everything. So if you're a freelancer trying to pitch them, you need to find their content calendar that's usually on their ad pages of whoever it is, and find out what topics are coming up like several months in advance, because they will love you forever that you were that ahead. Because we got pitched on a story that they need for their April issue, and they need it by March 15th. Now that's not a lot of leeway for me. And so it's just like, it's just harder to turn that around. So content managers, you are looking at the analytics even more. You're focusing on what is resonating with your readers and what isn't. And also, depending on who you're working for, you're kind of building your content out around it. Like in NALP, we have several programs. Like we have our Awards of Excellence program. So I'm writing a series on the 2020 winners and highlighting their winning projects. And then at the bottom of the article, it's just like enter now for the 2021 thing. So it's kind of like you need to plan content around the needs of your company or whoever's hired you.
So if I'm either working on staff, so I did an interview with someone else who said she was on staff at a particular company and they had to daily pitch ideas, and she had the best pitch to acceptance ratio, and it was 1 out of 10. She had the best one of the, normally would be 1 out of 20 ideas would be accepted, the rest would be rejected. And then of course, if people are freelancing, you might not get much feedback at all. So if you were a writer and you're having to pitch a lot of ideas, or you're a freelancer, you're writing something and you want to submit it, how do you think about that content manager to try to get a better ratio on your pitches, or to get sold, get your article sold?
I'm not sure if this really falls into our wheelhouse with that. It's like, I remember I had to pitch ideals to my boss when I was with Total Landscape Care. I was just like, well, how about this? What if I write about this and everything? And with that one, it was like more wide open. Now for the weekly newsletter, I talk to my boss about stories that I have in mind for the following month and everything. And because as an association, you have to be positive and you have to spin it right and everything. Sometimes stories that might be interesting and cool stories aren't necessarily what an association would be doing. So I'm not sure if I can answer that question right.
Well, I mean, it is a complicated question, and it, as you mentioned, it depends a lot on who you're working for and what exactly it is that you're doing. Obviously, obviously someone who's working for a nonprofit or someone who's working for a corporation might have totally different ideas about what they're going to do. A trade publication versus a publication of an advocacy group will be different, and so forth. So it is hard, I think, for the writer, and one of the more challenging things for a writer, I think, is to accept the idea of your ideas being rejected, of you pitching an idea and being told, sorry, great idea, we're never going to do that, or terrible idea. One of the other common denominators that we've been hearing is, don't take rejection personally, you're going to get rejected often. Has that been your experience as well?
I still take it personally. I'm still working on that. It's like literally anytime someone has a critique on an article or I didn't like this, I'm just kind of like, what do you mean? Like, we had this one brouhaha, like a lady, she didn't ask for prior review, and then she was upset when she didn't get it. And she wanted to change the article, and I was like, that's fine, tell me what you wanted to change, because it was about diversity and inclusion, so we definitely didn't want it being interpreted the wrong way. And the way that she acted on the phone, she was just like, oh, I couldn't sleep last night, I can't believe you ran it like this and everything. I thought she needed to change the whole thing. She changed one sentence in it, but she was just like, had me in tears, because I was just like, I had no intention of writing it this way. It was just, I don't know how you get thick skin, but if you know how to get it, don't put your self-worth in your work because it's very brutal.
It is a surprisingly brutal job for one that people imagine is a lot of sitting around wearing your beret, smoking clove cigarettes, and complaining about how bourgeois everyone is.
Everyone's a critic, everyone. And some of them are valid, and the ones that are valid, take that and use it and move forward. But for the ones that you're just like, who is this crazy person? Why are they saying this? This is not what this is about. One, they probably don't have reading comprehension. And two, don't let it get you down. Like, people are crazy, and it's just like, I still let it bother me, but you really, really shouldn't let it bug you that much, because it's like, you just need to know which is actually commentary that you need to be like, oh yeah, I messed up here, or I shouldn't have done that. Like, probably some of the most well-learned lessons are like from mistakes. Like you will never forget those.
Now, do you have any last advice for either writers or editors or content managers, people who, I mean, these students who want to move into these jobs? Do you have any advice for them that we haven't covered yet?
I would say when they are interviewing people, even though some people know enough to say, don't print that, or this is off the record and everything, you need to learn to self-edit your people that you're interviewing, because just because they said something doesn't mean you should run it, especially when you're trying to endear goodwill with people. It's like you need to know when it's like they said something off the cuff and you're just like, ooh, I don't think they really wanted to see that in print. So just kind of like have the foresight, help them out a little bit. A lot of people don't interview often, so they don't know what they should and shouldn't be saying on the record. So that just helps them in general and reduces drama in your life. So that's my top tip.
Jill Odom, award-winning writer, editor, and content manager. Thank you so much for your time today.